Hello, I'm Mark Bishop, Professor Emeritus of Cognitive Computing at Goldsmiths, now Scientific Advisor to FACT360. And I regret that I must begin this presentation with a health warning. The talk is no longer exactly that was advertised. You see, shortly after participating in the Innovate Cyber ASAP Accelerator Programme, all but one of my erstwhile colleagues at TCEDA, the Centre for Intelligent Data Analytics at Goldsmiths, University of London, left to form a spin-out, FACT360, to commercialise our ideas, leaving me leading a research centre comprising of myself and one RA. Well, it wasn't long before I decided to follow suit. I left Goldsmiths to join FACT360 on Thursday, October the 1st, and, as a result, have been obliged to modify the focus of this presentation a little. Instead, I've elected to give a broad, high-level overview of a 360-degree approach to fraud analysis and corporate threat that we call FACT360. At FACT360, we believe our intentions are reflected in behaviour, and behaviour is reflected in our use of words. As words represent topics of discussion, points in time where such concepts appear or disappear will mark a change point in our behaviour, an anomaly. Hence, analysing communication interactions within corporate information flows and the linguistic styles in which these are expressed allows us to track changes in intention because people's motivations change. Working Knowledge is a recent Harvard Business School study published on the 14th of September this year that highlighting that work-from-home employees are running longer days with more meetings and more emails than ever before. An analysis of the emails and meetings of 3.1 million people across 16 global cities found that the average workday increased by 8.2% or around 48 minutes during the pandemic's early weeks. Employees also participated in more meetings, albeit for less time than they did before COVID-19. Shifting to remote work at the start of the pandemic stripped away whatever was left of that elusive 9 to 5 business day and has replaced it with video conferencing and asynchronous work. With at least 16% of Americans planning to keep working from home at least part of the time when COVID-19 eventually abates, researchers are currently investigating just how this shift to virtual work patterns will reshape the corporate threat landscape. Fraud analysis and corporate threat are two problems fundamentally centred on identifying the unknown. But how can we even begin to inquire into that we know not? Typically, technology for insider threat detection focuses on security information and event management, CM, deploying models of values and norms to foreground risky behaviours. Thus, information governance processes such as Security Information Management, SIM, or Security Event Management, SEM, identify and track access to so-called critical value data, CVD. But this requires a data template for the CVD, or complex rules, or machine learning to identify the CVD, or threats to the CVD. And hence only really defends against what's become known as Donald Rumsfeld's infamous known knowns, effectively merely defining a Maginot Land in the sand. Such systems can be brittle, blind to unfamiliar threats, and are clearly strongly language contingent. Alternatively, user and entity behavioural analytics, UABA, can be used to flag anomalous network activity at the entity or IP level. However, UABA can be blind to hostile action that mimics normal behaviours. So, could there be another way to pick up signals characteristic of hostile intent?
This is Gordon Welshman, a World War II code-breaking hero. Without him, the top-secret German Enigma codes might never have been broken. The war could have lasted 2 more years, and tens of thousands more would have died. Gordon Welshman should be famous. His contribution to the war was as great as Alan Turing's. Why have we never heard of him?
When I was a child, there was always in the family the sense that Dad had done something quite important during the war. But of course, we didn't really know the details, and it couldn't really be talked about.
Gordon Welshman was the architect of a code-breaking technique that was so clever and so powerful that its wartime use at Bletchley Park still remains classified.
Can you imagine this? Events unfold and you're dropped into the opening of a long and complex fraud investigation with a million messages to sift through. And you're not sure who you're looking for, or what you're looking for, or when any incidents of interest might have occurred. Well, perhaps surprisingly, the underlying problem isn't new. As far back as 380 BC, Plato framed the following Socratic dialogue called the Meno. How would you inquire, Socrates, into that you know not? What will you put forth as a subject of inquiry? And if you find what you want, how will you ever know that this is what you did not know? Well, Meno's paradox, as it became known, can be reframed as follows. If you know what you're looking for, inquiry is unnecessary. If you don't know what you're looking for, inquiry is impossible. Therefore, inquiry is either unnecessary or impossible. And this, of course, directly relates to the problem of fraud analysis and corporate threat detection, because typically we don't know what the threat is, how it might develop, or when it will be realised. Now, Plato's response to this paradox is found in his theory of recollection, wherein knowledge exploration and discovery is merely our recollection of timeless forms from a period long before our immortal souls were imprisoned inside our physical bodies. Slightly more prosaically, perhaps, at FACT360, answers are revealed by transactional analytics and elementary natural language processing. Inspired by Gordon Welshman's traffic analysis of axis signals, transactional analytics leverages unstructured human information across corporate communication networks to detect subtle changes in behaviour characteristic of covert activity. Fundamentally misconstruing what transactional analytics offers, the CEO of a major UK data security company once remarked to me, "I'd never communicate anything sensitive in corporate communications." But because transactional analytics focuses on subtle changes in communication transactions and not message semantics, the precise topics being discussed are almost irrelevant. Okay, how do we do this? Well, at Bletchley Park in World War II, Alan Turing, BBC's icon of the century, was primarily concerned with decrypting German communications, decoding those message semantics. Whereas his colleague Gordon Welshman was primarily concerned with message transactions. That German Commander A in Bayeux is communicating to German Commander B in Caen at 9:17 a.m. on the morning of June the 6th, 1944. Well, it was interesting to note that unlike Turing's work on breaking the Enigma codes, much of Welshman's research still falls under the Official Secrets Act. In this context, at a recent meeting of the European Council on Foreign Relations in London, Claudia Aradu, Professor of International Politics in the Department of War Studies, King's College London, highlighted how transactions, what people actually do, often reveals more useful intelligence than what people say. The metaphor Claudia used to highlight this contrasted those little lies we might tell on a Facebook or dating site profile with the hard fact that person A communicated to person B at a certain time and place. At FACT360, we believe that in order to identify a threat to an organisation, we need to be very clear on exactly what constitutes an organisation, such as Apple, IBM, Google, etc. Is it their management and staff, their buildings and locale, their assets, their equity, their cash flow, their technology, their very products or services? Because all of these things can change over time. Well, at FACT360, our research is informed by Alfred North Whitehead's process view of organisation, viewed through the transformational conceptual lens of Umberto Martorana and Francisco Varela's autopoietic theory, such that, under Nicholas Luhmann's conception of autopoiesis, the essence of a company is nothing more than self-organising information flows that persist over time across a company's communication network. If Luhmann is correct, critical information about the health of an organisation and its employees will be found channeling through those very information flows. Using emails, and in principle, and when available, phone and meeting records, we can graph the communication flows within an organisation as a communication network of nodes, where each node represents an employee, perhaps defined by their email address or telephone number, etc., with directed arcs to communicating nodes and contacts. The broad architecture we implement with FACT360 fundamentally processes organisational communications in the time domain. We convert discrete events, sending and receiving text-based messages, each of which is being comprised of discrete symbols and discrete words, into streams of multivariate continuous data. Then, by highlighting anomalies in these signals using change point analysis, we reveal automatically the unknown unknowns in our data, foregrounding potentially critical behavioural change, all done automatically. To generate our insights into communication networks, FACT360 deploys three key enabling technologies. The first is transactional analytics. Here, real-time graph and artificial intelligence algorithms are used to automatically group employees by identifying communities, that's our proxy for teams, and hence we can infer proxies for team activity and team health directly from our logged transactional data. Furthermore, topic analysis can reveal clusters of related transactions, revealing the key concepts that are discussed in messages or documents and emails across one or more communication channels. Channel characterization can automatically derive a model for normal linguistic dialogue across a given channel or a set of channels. And this can also be used to alert when language across those channels subtly changes. The second key enabling technology is basic, very elementary natural language processing. We use part-of-speech tagging. That's an automatic process for determining if a given word is a verb, a noun, an adjective, etc. And this enables the system to disambiguate some word meanings. For example, can as a noun is a drinks container versus can as a modal verb. Lemmatization performs the opposite task. It is used to group words together rather than distinguish them. For instance, the words are, be, and is all stem from the verb to be and must be processed as such by our calculations. Context selection takes into account the fact that words have multiple meanings and therefore cannot be processed in isolation. For instance, bank can mean the side of a river, or it can mean a financial institution. We also apply dimensionality reduction techniques to our corpus, which allows us to remove redundant information from the text. The third key enabling technology is anomaly detection. Here we use change point analysis to identify subtle breakpoints in time series, points in time where relevant change happens. The method deployed by FACT360 stems from research led by the Twitter Labs, and this can successfully detect important change even when this is almost invisible to the naked eye. Conversely, spike detection is used to flag large-scale, abrupt and significant changes in our time signals. So, by dynamically highlighting behavioural change across employee communication networks, FACT360 can flag in real time suspicious communications across a communication channel. For example, a low-ranking employee repeatedly communicating with, for example, a member of the board. And flag workload and work-life balance, perhaps flagging excessive out-of-hours communications. Or we can look at team members withdrawing, signalling a lack of engagement with the company. Or subtle change in language use between particular employees, potentially flagging deceitful behaviour. Or we can identify communications on key concepts of interest that can be correlated with known timeline events, potentially linking to known covert activity. And we can flag the sentiment of communication, the use of sexist or typically bullying language, etc., which can be indicative of workplace harassment. And we can also identify company-wide team dissipation, suggestive of, under Luhmann's conception of autopoiesis, a disintegrating corporate structure. To summarise, FACT360's transactional analytics can either be used live for insider threat detection and human capital management. Here, daily alerts signal subtle change in communication that typically pass unnoticed to the human eye. And this can allow for early intervention to stop a corporate threat before a danger is ever realised. And in the HR context, we can look at metrics across various units at the company level, the team level, or the individual level, and these reveal engagement. Is that unit engaged with the organisation? Efficiency. How often and how quickly do units respond? Workload. We can flag significant changes to, say, inbox size. Work-life balance. We can flag high volume out-of-hours communications. And siloisation, the degree to which knowledge and know-how is becoming siloed in an organisation. Alternatively, transactional analysis can focus purely on historical data in, say, a fraud investigation. Here, the system does not totally replace existing technologies, rather it provides additional layers of information gathering to more rapidly expedite the investigation and evidence gathering process. Thank you. I'm Mark Bishop. You can find me as Prof. J. Mark Bishop on LinkedIn, or you can email me via mark.bishop@fact360.com.